This is insane. What's up, everybody? I hope everyone's having a fantastic evening, afternoon, pre-noon, no matter where you guys are in the world. I'm doing another intro at this point. I'm Hasan Piker, also known as Hasanabi. I feel like a lot of you guys know who I am, so that's good. All right. This is nuts. I did not expect this many people to show up to an event. When I was approached originally, I thought it was gonna be like, I'm just gonna sit down, there's gonna be like maybe like a little college lecture or something like that, maybe 6 to 10 people. I didn't realize there was hundreds of you. That's a little terrifying, especially considering that the last time I had done a college campus endeavor like this, like a speaking gig, it was at the Young Turks in 2016. The Young Turks, for the younger people in the audience, is kind of like what I do, but for now older people that are still online. And at the time, I had no media training. I could not even talk coherently for an extended period of time. I was just a mess, right? And so they, of course, sent me out to warm up the crowd at University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. And, okay, people clapping for Michigan, all right. And basically, I came out to an audience kind of like this, in this massive auditorium, and I just stood there and I was like, nothing. I just blanked out, because I was going to freestyle and basically warm up the crowd for my uncle's media organization. I am a Nepo baby, but this is USC. This is, I feel like I'm in good territory with Nepo babies. This is, anyway. Sorry. Listen, you gotta take what you can get in today's job market, all right? I'm not gonna fault you for it. So I came outside in front of this audience and I just blanked out, and it's crazy because today I realized that I was supposed to do a 10-minute monologue, and I was like, shit, I have no idea. I did not prepare for this at all. But luckily, that was 2016. I had just started my media career. And, many, many years later, I can't seem to shut the hell up. So I'm just gonna yap a little bit until we get to the Q&A, and then we have some questions from you guys. But I'm very excited, so thank you, USC, for having me here. Yeah, apparently I'm a somewhat controversial figure. I did not know about this until this very moment when I came out, and I found out that there was a massive letter writing campaign with 27,000 letters demanding that USC not let a controversial figure such as myself come and speak. And it's really funny because, like, in the letter they were like, he was banned for racial slurs. But they didn't put what racial slur I was banned for, which is pretty funny when you think about it, because you're like, this guy Hasan, he was banned for racial slurs. Like, what is it? Oh, it's because I said cracker. That's right. So I apologize to all my fellow crackers out there. I know, this is hostile territory. Very, very problematic guy. But yeah, I'm here to talk to you guys, hopefully, about masculinity, positive influences of masculinity online. There's a lot of people, obviously, out there, especially guiding a lot of young men, I would say, online, leading them astray. And I try to actively de-radicalize people away from the alt-right. I'm sure there's some members in the community right now, and some members in the audience even, that may or may not have found themselves when they were younger, more vulnerable, in a place in their lives where they felt like, maybe they just started watching some YouTube videos, and then you watch a Markiplier video, then a Joe Rogan video comes up, and then all of a sudden you're like listening to Jordan Peterson talk about how, the dragons are coming and trans people are the reason why, I don't know, climate change is happening, but it's also fake. I don't know what he talks about. He's insane. But basically, I try to lead people away from that and find a more positive version of themselves. And I think that it's very important. We're all on our own journey of self-improvement. And I certainly am as well. I am not a perfect individual. I have many issues, as I'm sure you guys are aware of. I like room temperature Gatorade. I sometimes fart on planes. I apologize for that, guys. People think that that's one of my more controversial positions, apparently. They didn't mention that in the letter writing campaign, which is weird. But I wanted to come here and speak to you guys, and hopefully we can have a productive conversation. And I am genuinely in awe that so many people showed up. This is crazy. I never thought that this would happen. So thank you so much once again for being here. And I think we can get started. I don't know if that monologue was 10 minutes long. I can keep going if need be, I guess. Maybe we'll start. I don't know. I hear some footsteps back there. I also popped open the curtain. Well, they popped open the curtain and I just almost walked out. It's an amateur hour here, Hopefully, I don't really do these. Oh, there you are. Hi. Okay.
From behind the curtain. I think this is pretty obvious now. If you want to send a question to Hasan,
do you mind
scan the QR code.
Popping this on for me?
Thank you, Marsh. Shouts out to Marsh.
Okay, it's a testament to how much I love my students that I'm willing to be on the Twitch live stream. That is like totally not my vibe, right? So we're going to talk just a little bit, Hasan and I, about what he does, about his very astute political commentary, a little bit about masculinity, but then we'll open things up to the questions y'all have submitted. Inez, my really rock star of a media producer, will come out and share some of y'all's questions. So you still have plenty of time to get those in there if you want to. So we talked a little bit backstage about your transition into Twitch from the Young Turks, but can you talk a little bit about why Twitch felt to you like the media platform that was right for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was at the Young Turks, I had a little journey from doing back office work and being responsible for sales and all of our advertisement sales and operations. But I always had an aspiration for being in front of the camera, even though I sucked at it. Like, I was so freaking bad at being on camera. I couldn't speak at all. So I realized, like, what can I do? Well, I can write fairly decently. So I started my journey there by being like, I will do this work for free. I will script out my commentary that's not usual for the Young Turks. And I will do a teleprompter show that I call The Breakdown. And that's where I began my journey. But the IP was owned by the Young Turks, and they could do whatever they wanted with it. And I always felt like I wanted my own community. I wanted something that was my own while I was there. So I've always played video games. I played a lot of video games until I was 18 when I came to America, and then I lost my virginity, and then I stopped playing video games for a little bit. And then my virginity grew back. But basically, I already was playing a lot of, and this is really cringe and embarrassing to admit, I was playing a lot of Fortnite. And I was playing a lot of Fortnite with buddies of mine that were at the time Noah Colwyn, who was at the time he was the senior editor of the Jewish Currents, and my other friend Felix Biederman, he's a podcast host, one of the co-hosts and founders of Chapo Trap House. So we would be playing Fortnite, and I was like, why don't I just strap a camera to my PlayStation and just, film these conversations, like live stream these conversations that I'm having with these guys anyway. So basically that's how I started. And there were a couple different reasons for why I started on Twitch. Number one, I saw the gaming space and the culture surrounding gaming, and I thought that all of the political commentary that surrounds this space was heavily influenced by right-wing or far-right elements. And I know for a fact from myself and from all the other people that I knew in this environment that like gamers were much more diverse than the neck-bearded weirdos that you still see prop up everywhere, right? And I knew that I knew that there was definitely an environment where I could directly tackle the subject matter in a relatively hostile environment, as a matter of fact. The other reason was because I wanted to present an alternative aesthetic almost to what it meant to be a progressive person. Because I think in this era, in like the end of the Obama era especially, there was a lot of liberalism out there, and I think a lot of people were misguided into thinking that being progressive meant like making sure that your media diet was a certain way. And it was a heavy emphasis on like cultural consumption and not necessarily anything material. And basically, I guess the short and sweet of it is I was like, you can be a leftist and be fun, like, and have fun. And I wanted to show that. And last but not least, I guess perhaps the most important thing was that I was really bad off script. So I was like, I need to learn how to speak clearly for extended periods of time without interruption. And I thought this will be good training. I'll be able to, entertain people, and I'll force myself to entertain people over extended periods of time, and I'll get better at basically speaking to a large audience such as this one. And now I can't seem to shut up, so I guess it worked.
Well, one of the things I learned as we were getting ready for this event is that you have an incredibly generous and open IP policy where people could basically just like take your shit and do what they want with it.
Wait,
right?
we can curse?
Yes.
Your professor curses? Okay, good. I'll still try to limit it. I know your family's here. So. But yes, you're right. So I grew up in Turkey, and okay, shout out to Turkey. Let's go. So the thing is, we didn't really have a lot of access to IP in Turkey. It was like heavily limited, video games specifically. So I played virtually every single video game that ever came out at the time because I stole them. I pirated them. And it's a streamlined process in developing nations or, in second world nations, whatever you want to call it, where you can go to a brick and mortar storefront where they literally sell you pirated copies of movies and games. This is like fascinating, I think, for Americans in general, because like that doesn't really happen here, because as Gabe Newell once said, piracy is a service problem, and he's absolutely right about that, where like if it's readily accessible and available for everyone here, you probably aren't going to demand like any kind of black market introduction. But I think that was early on why I always saw the importance of being able to steal shit and didn't care much for IP, because I wouldn't have ever been able to experience any of this stuff if it wasn't for that. And that is something that I've maintained throughout my entire career as well. So yeah, I allow people to upload my streams if they want to do so, as long as they're not like nefariously using it for some ill-gotten, for some awful purpose, right? Like I have no problems with it, and it's built this robust network of content creators themselves that we like to call the Hasanabi Clips Industrial Complex, and there are hundreds of channels at this point. There are a couple that are very successful, sometimes even more successful than my channel, where I'm like, bro, chill, okay? You're getting a little ahead of yourself, okay? But there was when I was at the UCLA pro-Palestinian encampment. This is the saying that at USC is. But yeah, when I was there, a student approached me. I mean, many students approached me about like what how they've started off and how they founded themselves at this encampment. But like one student in particular came up to me and was like, I was able to pay my college tuition because of you, because you have given me the opportunity to just like restream your content and package it and upload it to YouTube and restream it on Twitch even. And that way I was able to pay off a percentage of my tuition. And that's precisely why I do that, because I think there is entirely too much content over 8 to 10 hours that I can't like repackage and upload anyway. Yeah. And it's great if people can make money on that on their own end by editing it and putting it up, then great, I'm happy for it.
And it's a really nice counterbalance to the fact that Bezos owns Twitch, right? So it circulates content in a way free from that ecosystem that I appreciate. What do you think's changed about Twitch over the years that you've been there? I mean, I think it would be very hard just to break into it easily now, right? The space is dominated by folks like you, but like how has the platform changed as a place where you hang out every day? Do you find real differences?
I think there was I would say, I mean, this is like super specific as Twitch streaming, like as far as like community. Back in the day when we were all, I guess, quote unquote, blowing up, the platform seemed more familiar. Like it was definitely not as professional, and people were not considered like media entities in their own right. So there was a lot more cross-pollination, there was a lot more collaboration, and I think the production was like significantly more limited back then too. I would just like basically live stream myself with my phone, right? I'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna go to the grocery store and I'm gonna live stream that process. And I think people still do that to a certain degree now, but like back then it felt way more tight-knit almost. Whereas now I do feel like every man is an island and that like every person is almost like a media entity. There's still a lot of collaboration, there's still a lot of friendships, but overall I think that aspect of it has become way more professional for sure. In terms of breaking into Twitch, I mean, I think even back then it was very difficult because the platform is not conducive to blowing up and going viral. It's very top heavy, and I don't even know how to like solve that in general. I think Twitch tries pretty hard to fix that problem, but overall you definitely do have to have, you have to network a lot, and you definitely need to nowadays especially utilize TikTok like outside of Twitch and like try to create a funneling mechanism to funnel your audience back into Twitch if you want to create an audience on Twitch. And there are some young content creators out there who have done a fantastic job with this. Queso is one of them, Jinxie is another one. Pirate Software, specifically on YouTube, was able to crack that code, and now they're some of the biggest content creators on the platform, and they did that over a very short period of time by working very hard and ensuring that they were consistently using their platform outside of Twitch to funnel an audience into Twitch.
I mean, when we were backstage, we were talking about your perception that what you're doing when you stream is just you, right? That you're not consciously creating a manicured persona that you present on stream. As much as you stream, that would be hard to do, right? But do you feel like your kind of relationship to your chat is similar to other Twitch streamers, or are you operating in a different kind of space in some way?
I think I probably yell at my chat way more than than other streamers do. I think I definitely interact with my chat way more frequently as a byproduct of the type of content that I make. I see this as like an interactive experience. I think the medium lends itself perfectly to that, obviously, but I do news and commentary, whereas like most people are playing video games, or at least like they're doing IRL content, and it's not usually that like consistent back and forth with your chat, even though there is definitely a lot of back and forth communication because of the medium itself. I don't think most people do it to the same degree that I do it. But beyond that, I mean, it's also brain breaking for sure. I don't think that I would not suggest people do that, honestly. But I guess I'm just the right kind of insane to be able to do it. Beyond that, however, you asked earlier about like a persona. I think it's impossible for me to create a persona and then keep it up for 8 to 10 hours. I feel like if you were to do that, you would probably end up becoming that person at the end of the day. Because, I mean, it's impossible. There are going to be emotional moments, sad moments. I mean, I'm getting up to pee, I'm eating food on camera, I'm doing everything over the course of 8 hours. So I think, you know, that's a level of authenticity that maybe solidifies that bond between the community, the audience, and the content creator itself. Because, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'd be more parasocial by Jake Tapper if he was, you know, if I knew what he was eating for lunch every day. Probably not, but who knows?
Well, I mean, you in a recent online discussion talked about that as, for you, reverse parasocial relationship. Break that down for us, what you mean by that. Yeah,
you're airing out my dirty laundry. This is inappropriate. That was supposed to be private.
I mean, it was a line.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I definitely know way too much about like random chatters for sure. Like know where they're from, know their background, know what they've said at like a certain date, and it just like stays in my brain. And I feel like I'm losing formative memories. Like when or where or how was my first kiss? I don't know, but I know that like, you know, there's a chatter called Apollinaire that lives in fucking Ohio, and he's a gay black man. Why do I know that? I shouldn't know that, right? That's a real chatter, by the way. I didn't make that up. Like he's probably watching right now, and I think that's what it is in terms of like reverse parasocial behavior. It especially was like I saw streaming as like an escape during COVID. My dog died in the beginning of COVID. I was alone in this like 1-bedroom apartment. Couldn't interact with the outside world. Terrified of like what was going on. You know, as many of us were, confused and scared. And I had also left my job at the Young Turks, so I was like, I have nothing else. Like this is the only thing I have. I'm so fucked. So I started streaming for like 12 to 13 hours a day because I needed to keep myself occupied. I needed to keep my brain occupied. So I definitely leaned on my community as a place that I could hang out at every single day. And I still try to maintain it to the best of my ability to ensure that we are not hostile to people that are coming in who might not understand the culture or the memes or anything like that. And as long as they're on their own educational journey, as long as they're trying to better themselves, like you have a safe space in my community.
I mean, I really love the way across, you know, I have to confess I've never watched you for 12 hours, but I'm interested in the way that you bring entertainment and news together, right? You've got a very intentional style that is hardcore in terms of what you know about geopolitical history, how you understand, like, to break down, you know, what's happening in the election cycle, but you're also gaming and you're also casual, right? How do you understand and find the right balance for yourself between news and cultural commentary and having fun?
Yeah, I mean, it's all fun for me because, like I said, I'm brain broken. So, like, I love politics. I love discussing politics. I love reading about it. I love learning about it. And that definitely is not normal. I know that. I'm sorry. Okay, but beyond that, I see everything I do as another mechanism to like put myself out there in front of an audience that is larger than mine or different than mine. And everything I do, I try to do because I need charitability when I'm describing certain topics, especially topics from a perspective that most people are not initiated with, whether I'm talking about socialism or whether I'm talking about like the other side of American empire, the people that are in the crosshairs of American bombs and American militarism. They often do not get a perspective. They often do not get a voice in American media, and that is by design.
Yeah.
Because if you were to start recognizing that like these children that are being bombed are real human beings and not simply collateral damage that is a necessary but unfortunate byproduct of like securing a military goal, all of a sudden, I think more Americans will probably be on board with stopping all of that. So I try to give voice to the voiceless in that regard, and speak for marginalized communities domestically and also foreign. And in order to be able to successfully do that, you're going to need to unwind a lot of the things that people take for granted in terms of social conditioning, and it requires a tremendous level of charitability and genuine interest, like intellectual interest in seeing things in a different way than you had not previously sought out, that you had not previously thought about. And for that purpose, I know that I have to do fun shit all the time, because if I don't do that, then people only know me as like whatever they've seen that's like clipped out of context usually, and that like if someone comes in to my chat, to my community with an inherently hostile attitude, that is not going to be productive for them. They're not going to respond to the things I'm saying in a way where they're like, I never thought about it like that. Like that's what I really value. So that's the reason why I do, I game, because I genuinely like playing video games, and I do collaborations because I genuinely like people and hanging out with them. So I try to present myself in this dynamic way so that I'm not relegated to this neat little confine of what, the least charitable person has like ordained me to be.
I loved the interview you did in Wired Middle East, both for the fashion, because those photographs are pretty awesome, but also for the content, right? So you talked a little bit in that interview about how you view your relationship to the mainstream kind of corporate media, right? And I think your position is really complex and nuanced, and not necessarily the position a lot of streamers might have where they just want to reject entirely mainstream journalism. So can you talk a little bit about how you thread that needle? I would not be able to do what I do if it wasn't for like real journalism, because I'm not, I don't have the network of thousands of people that are going out and actively covering what is going on in conflict zones and things of that nature. So like I need real journalism to exist so I can provide commentary over it. So I'm not ever going to immediately reject mainstream media sources ever. As a matter of fact, I rely on it heavily. And the way I see what I do is basically like holding your hand through the journey of understanding what a news article is saying, or even choosing to omit, because I think a lot of stuff not discussed gets lost in the bylines, basically, where something that everyone here probably is aware of is passive voice when talking about whether Israel's atrocities or police presence on any given Sunday, basically a police shooting. Like they'll always use a specific term, like they'll always use terminology that makes it seem as though a cop didn't shoot someone, but instead like someone, bullets just materialized out of nowhere, right? Out of thin air. And same with bombs, right? It's like hospital got in the way of bombs. Who knows who blew it up? I try to explain to people where certain biases may come from in terms of mainstream press, in terms of mainstream media, state media. One example I use is like Al Jazeera is a fantastic resource for international news, specifically in the Middle East. But if you ask them about like domestic Qatar policies, like that's not going to be where you get your best news and information from, because they're the state broadcaster. Same with the right-wing bias that the BBC might have on certain issues. Same with the New York Times.
And so I still heavily rely on trusted, verified resources. And I guess like a lot of my criticism for people in the way that they look at the media is that they do not have enough media literacy. But beyond that, I wish that there was better reporting out there, usually, in terms of like what kind of questions journalists ask to people in positions of power. Like adversarial reporting is no longer a thing. It's like a dying art. I mean, Seymour Hersh is no longer getting any bylines in the New York Times. This is just not going to happen anytime ever again, especially with like NatSec reporting. And that's pretty devastating. I think that journalism is incredibly important, and incredibly important for the pursuit of the truth, incredibly important for us to get a better understanding of what's going on all around the world. And so, that's where my media criticism is for the most part.
And there's a really kind of interesting interplay, I think, between what mainstream media has failed to provide for us in the last year and how social media has stepped into that gap, right?
Yeah. So, I think you're talking about Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And someone like Hasan, kind of alive and streaming and showing us what's actually happening in Gaza in a way that was not available to us in our mainstream media. But you have been talking about the situation in Palestine for a decade, right? So can you talk a little bit about how you navigate that and why it's important that voices like yours or Basan's are available to people so they can understand our world better?
Yeah, there's definitely a major democratization of the way information is disseminated online, for sure. There's the good, like what you mentioned, in terms of Basan and many other Palestinian content creators and journalists out there that can directly address their own humanity and communicate their own humanity and what they're going through. And I think that's really threatening for mainstream media, for anyone that wants to maintain a steady flow of information in whichever direction they want to maintain it. And beyond that, I think like in terms of the commentary space, that's also been great, but then there's also the bad, right? There's also a lot of misinformers who are either grifting or deliberately omitting certain details or have their own biases that they don't reveal. Like one thing I always mention is that, yeah, I'm biased, everyone is, but at least I'm honest about what my biases are. Like I will tell you exactly what I think, and I'm stubborn to a fault, and I will always communicate that to you ahead of time. So I think that is more honest, I guess, than someone saying I'm actually doing objective journalism and presenting false narratives while maintaining this like objectivity, this credibility, I guess, that comes from being objective. So, yeah, overall, that has genuinely changed the way that so many people view the plight of the Palestinians that have been ongoing for 76 years now. And it is definitely so threatening that, I mean, Congress was working to destroy TikTok as a direct consequence of that. And I mean, I don't know where we go with that, because like Kamala Harris is doing brat memes and stuff on there now. So I guess they're not going to ban TikTok any longer. I don't know what's going on with that. They're still using it. I guess the one positive would be Harry Sisson would be out of a job if they ban TikTok. I don't know. I guess you guys don't know who that is. Never mind. He's one of those like TikTok Zoomer mouthpieces for the DNC. I love him, but that's besides the point. But yeah, I mean, I don't think we would have seen the broad international support for a free Palestine that we've seen since last October if social media hadn't connected with so many people to help us understand what was happening in the world. It's been amazing. Like I spent a good amount of time at USC's encampment last April and May. And
the level of organic peer-to-peer education that was going on in that space was profound, right? There were students talking to each other about the world around them, articulating a brilliant kind of understanding, privileged to participate in. It, was outraging that our senior administration never walked across the sidewalk to meet the students who were sitting there and have suspended students they perceived to be leaders in that movement, right? So I am very grateful for streamers who help open the world up to other ways of knowing. So I'm grateful for you. I'd also like to tip back to the DNC since you brought it up and talk a little bit about your experience there. What was it like to stream for the DNC, to get kicked out?
Yeah, so I was actually quite surprised that they even gave me an opportunity to go to the DNC to begin with. I was one of the creators for Kamala. Which is interesting because I was very critical of the Biden administration, and one thing that they communicated to me ahead of time before Biden actually dropped out, because at the time I was like, Biden needs to drop out, Biden needs to drop out, over and over again. I was like, he's a carcass and everyone can see it. The fuck is wrong with you? I had a conversation with them where they were like, you cannot say Biden is not the president. That was the major thing that they stressed to me. And then I was like, we'll see. And I didn't have to be committed to that any longer at the DNC because you know what happened. And I think that there was definitely a lot of optimism in the air in the early swap out, especially after Tim Walz was chosen as the VP pick as well, which was almost like a nod that they were going to be forced almost to defend progressive policies that are not radical at all. We're talking about paid family leave and feeding children at school. This is, super basic stuff. It's not we're not doing communist healthcare or whatever, right? And I thought that was truly different from the way that the Democratic Party had operated in at least the past 10 years that I've done professional commentary, where they responded to public pressure. They responded to public pressure in a very meaningful way and did something that was truly unique, where they, with a couple months left in the election, dropped the candidate and swapped it with the vice president. And I was still a little worried because I had my fair share of criticism of Kamala Harris in the 2019 primary cycle. And I knew that she was a generic Democrat, but it made me at least still feel a little bit more hopeful about the future prospect of the party. And then we went to the DNC.
Yes, you did.
And let me tell you, the vibes were atrocious. And what I mean by that is they were so happy. It literally felt like I was in an entirely different universe. They were acting Kamala's winning by Reagan numbers, they were behaving like it was a landslide, like Pennsylvania's locked down, plus 30. And it was crazy to me because I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? This is a close race still, right? Kamala Harris is an unknown entity, in the way she presents herself and the way that the party packages Kamala Harris and the way that they message to a broad audience, a much broader audience for the first time ever, is going to be very important. And everything I heard from the DNC day after day, I was like, oh no. They had Bill Clinton on. What who is that for?
Yeah.
Who? Alan Dershowitz? He's not even a part of the party anymore. Apparently he dropped the Democratic Party. Who was that for?
Well, they had that Border Patrol guy.
Yeah, they had exactly. They had a Border Patrol guy. They had a bunch of former or current Republicans that are never Trump Republicans. These incredibly niche, incredibly specific, micro-targeted messaging campaigns for a sum total of maybe 2,000 voters across 3 states. And it was so frustrating to see. And I was like, oh no, they're doing it. they are going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory again. And then the last day, basically, thank you. You like that? I was like, hell yeah. I could tell he's weathered. He's been around the block. He's seen this too many times. Me too, brother. I'm 33 at this point. So I was getting increasingly more frustrated with the way that they were communicating, and then obviously what ended up happening was the day before the last day, they had the Israeli-American family of a hostage that was in Gaza speak, and I have no problem with that. These are American citizens, and they actually were probably the only people that were allowed to be critical of Benjamin Netanyahu and in the Israeli governance, which they were to a certain degree. But I thought, okay, well, now is the time to have a Palestinian American delegate that is working within the Democratic Party. Yes. And state legislator from Georgia, Ruvo, was like a perfect person for that. And the Uncommitted movement presented her from the beginning. She had a vetted speech. She was ready to go. And they refused. They made space for cops, border patrol guards, and Republicans, but it seemed like they didn't have a space for Palestinian Americans. And I thought that this was actively communicating to the American public, like, we are not interested in your plight. We are not interested in your family members, and that we are not going to change trajectory on Gaza. And, you know, I was very critical of that, and that led to me maybe being a little too critical when I was getting interviewed by New York Times in front of 60,000 people watching. They kind of pulled the plug of my operation and were like, you have to go.
I was very glad you met with the uncommitted delegates and that at least your stream provided a voice for Palestinian Americans to speak, right? That was fantastic. What would you say? I mean, there are a lot of students here in the audience who, many of them may be voting for a first time in a presidential election, a second time. What do you say to young people about how they should engage politics, especially if they have a level of fatigue with the centrist Democratic Party you described, right? Like how can we meaningfully participate in a political environment when we feel like a party like the Democrats are tacking, almost to like where Reagan was in the 80s. Like, what should young people
worse
do?
than Reagan on immigration. I mean, at least he gave amnesty, you know?
Absolutely.
So, which is crazy to say. I mean, I'm not saying that. Fuck Reagan.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is quite informative to watch the Reagan-George H.W. Bush debate on specifically immigration, though, from that election cycle. Sometimes I go back and watch those things because I'm a freaking nerd. And honestly, it's like shocking the way that they're talking about immigrants, where they're like, well, these are human beings, which is crazy. Like, that is where we've gotten in terms of like how far right we have ratcheted on so many issues. And I think that the Democratic Party is definitely responsible for that, because like they are supposed to be the expected counterbalance to growing fascism in this country. And they're definitely not up to the task, or at least like, I think, given their position as being servile to the same exact corporate benefactors, they just don't even play the role of a counterweight against that sort of thing. But what I would tell people is exactly what I tell people all the time in my community, in my chat, which is you just got to keep pushing, you got to keep protesting, you got to keep joining your local organizations and engage with your community and definitely vote for sure. I'm one common misconception is that people think I don't tell people to go out and vote. No, I do. I mean, I even played Among Us with AOC to do a Get Out the Vote initiative, But overall, I think Noam Chomsky says it's the least significant, most consequential thing you can do. And he's right. Vote for whoever you want to vote for, as long as it's not Donald Trump. But overall, I think what is far more consequential, especially in terms of like making impact in your immediate life, like having a long-lasting, tangible impact is voting down ballot, voting for initiatives. Like, these are very important things. And you shouldn't just only vote, but you should also continue creating networks of resilience and trying to do your very best to change things in your immediate vicinity, change things in your life, organize your workplace. These are very consequential ways in which you can present a better alternative and change the world around you. And I think that's very important.
I mean, there's amazing resurgence of labor in the country now, something we haven't seen in a long time, like union drives, right?
Yeah.
Our own grad students unionized, many industries, right? And locally, LA actually has a very powerful city council. Like in some cities like New York or Chicago, the city council doesn't matter quite so much. But in LA for a long time, the city council's just been selling LA out to developers, right? Like really not doing anything on behalf of everyday citizens. But we've got some pretty kick-ass city council people in now, 3, right? And we have an opportunity to bring some more. And they could do things like drive rent prices down, give renters protections, do things that will actually make LA a more livable city. And those are those down ballot votes that are really important to pay attention to, even if it's not a thing we talk about very much in like everyday life.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
So,
I definitely agree with that, for sure.
We were going to have a merch table tonight, but we don't. So there you have it, right? Some of you may know that, you can get some T-shirts that, Hasan rolls out. And they're pretty awesome. I'll let you figure this one out. The John Brown Hunting Club, right?
You don't have to. I don't know why that's in there. You do not have to promote that.
But no, I just think it's hilarious, right? And also, this one's a little deeper, right? Bloodshed is a commodity, right? But we took the capitalism is voluntary kind of theme for tonight out of Hasan's content, right? And so I just want you to talk to us a little bit about how you think about capitalism. James Baldwin, who was super prescient, like James Baldwin saw what was coming a long time ago, right? And in 1980, he wrote that by 2000, he may be right on this date, he might have been a little bit early, that the power...
He said 9/11 was going to happen?
He said the power of the Western world would be over. He says that nothing could prop...
He did.
Yeah. He said that nothing could prop up a system that was built on slavery, and it had ended, and the Western imperialist way would have to end as well. But he also said what followed that, in the early 21st century would be chaos, right? It would be hard. It would be divisive, right? Any of that sound familiar? We're in a little bit of it, right? So, how do we imagine? He also said that had to happen for what could come next, right? What can we imagine collectively coming next? And how do we fight toward that or love our way to it?
Oh, man. So
an easy question to end your day.
Yeah. Well, we are in the throes of barbarism, as James Baldwin correctly predicted, and for that reason, it's like quite difficult to imagine a better future. But one thing that people always ask me about all of the horrifying nature of American imperialism and all the things that I talk about, especially centering the victims in this conversation, is how I present a positive outlook. And one thing that I always point to, especially in terms of the way that Palestinian emancipation is perceived in the Western world, is that for the past 10 years, and every person that is an activist or an organizer or a Palestinian will tell you this, is that things changed so dramatically post October 7 in terms of broad reception and the recognition of the humanity of Palestinians. So I look to things like that even when it seems really devastating, when horrifying atrocities are happening almost daily. I still look to the fact that more and more people are waking up to this reality, and that gives me a lot more confidence that things can change inevitably, even if it seems like it's not going to happen immediately. And look, if you're a progressive, if you're a leftist, and you've been one for an extended period of time, you know that like you're just going to take a lot of L's. That's just it, okay? You're going to take a lot of L's. People are going to yell at you all the time. People are going to set like insane expectations of you that they do not fall into themselves, expectations that you have not set for yourself at all, and there's going to be infighting. But ultimately, I always tell people to keep their head down and put their best foot forward, and try to design a society that they want to live in, and push for that every single day. And that's precisely what I try to do. I mean, I always butcher this quote, but it's a healthy society only fosters when old men plant seeds for trees that they will never sit in the shade of. And I think that is my modus operandi. That's what I believe. That's what I try to do, and I think you can as well. But in terms of how we will move towards a more productive society, I think we're just going to have to keep creating networks of resistance for to the best of our ability, create more labor power in this country. Shouts out to Sean Fain at the UAW. He's been talking about potentially doing a general strike in 2028, and I think that's incredible. And it's not like a Reddit general strike or whatever you saw on Twitter. It's like that's how you're supposed to do it. It takes years and years of preparation for such a thing. And I think that we are still in the, I would say, informational stage where like we still have to work to develop class consciousness in this country after years and years of Red Scare propaganda, and American jingoistic sentiments, American militarism, Western chauvinism, and American individualism, just to actively go against that and to organize as best as possible. And then I think use these organizations inevitably to push the country in a direction that is better for every worker unconditionally across the board all around the world.
Inez come out, and she's going to share some of y'all's questions. But I just want to say to some of y'all in the room, because I see some folks I know were at the encampment, and I want to say to you, you were already building that world. It was a profoundly powerful commitment to making change. Teaching for over 30 years, and I have never been as moved by my students as I am with the students I have right now. I absolutely believe y'all will bring us to a better world. So let's have Inez come out and share your questions.
Thank you.
Tonight we have over 200 questions.
Damn.
We're going to ask them all.
We're going to be here all night. I got to pee like 8 times in that process.
I'm going to start maybe with a serious question. Hasan, are you hiring? And how does students work with you?
Oh, I'm so bad at that. I don't even have an assistant, which is crazy. I'm sorry, guys. I'm not really hiring. I try to keep everything like as like individually focused as possible, because like I don't want to expand beyond a certain point where I'm like a corporation. Like I don't want that to ever happen because I want to maintain my editorial control. I don't want to place anyone in the crosshairs like that. And beyond that, I don't have aspirations of becoming like a network. I mean, I'm fine if I have the audience of a network, right? But as long as it's, as long as it's still me as an individual and not necessarily like a bunch of different, like real-time 24/7 coverage from different
I learned
places.
tonight that he actually manages all the kind of chat interaction entirely by himself for like 10 hours a day. That blew my mind.
That's impressive. Just to piggyback off that, Hasan, do you believe political streamers have a responsibility to the public the way traditional media does?
Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, that's almost like a loaded question because I feel like the responsibility is often abdicated by mainstream professionals on a regular basis. They do a lot of access journalism. There are a lot of biases that heavily lean on the corporate side in terms of what they communicate, how they communicate, especially when it comes to foreign policy. It's uniparty, and you guys all know that. Obviously, there's this bipartisan consensus. So I hope that everyone that is engaged in political commentary has like some level of responsibility to the truth, to at the very least like communicate what their personal background is or what their personal biases may be. And I think that would foster, I guess, a better discussion around these subjects.
A fair few students wanted to know how you balance streaming and do you suffer from burnout, as well as how comments in your stream may affect your mental health.
Yeah, I definitely suffer from burnout. I think, I really love what I do. I'm an incredibly fortunate, incredibly privileged person, and I think luck played a massive role in my success. Something I bring up quite regularly, but having said all of that, yes, I do definitely burn out after trying to be entertaining and informative for 8 to 10 hours every single day. Yes, there's definitely a point where I'm just like, oh my God, my brain fries by the end of it. I did an NBC piece recently where they did like a day in the life, and the journalists at the end of my stream, they like literally tracked my day with a camera from like, I think 7 a.m. when I wake up all the way to like 10 p.m. when I was done, and she was horrified. Like she literally was like, I don't know how you do this. Like she was looking at me like I was a serial killer. Yeah. Like she could not comprehend it, and like she was tired just by watching. And I saw myself in the interview that I did after, like right after I end the stream, and I just looked like hollowed out. It's like, damn, I look like that at the end of the day.
Pretty tired.
But I think I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't truly love it and didn't find like so much emotional fulfillment from this. And I hope that everyone can find that in whatever they pursue. Mm-hmm. But having said that, yes, I definitely do burn out. And when that happens, I find myself with a hair trigger almost, where like I'm much quicker at like firing back at chatters. And when I notice myself getting there, I try to take like at least one day off, and just kind of tune out all the noise and then get back into it. So that's how I manage it.
I'm going to pivot to the topic of masculinity. It is what Tara and I work on for the Reclaim Project. Look us up, please. And a lot of students wanted to ask for your advice, and what advice you would give to people who have family members, siblings, friends, who they see starting to get more into right-wing, conservative, alpha bro content, and how to steer them away from it.
Oh, that's a tough one. So, I'd say show them some of my videos. I think maybe that could be helpful. But I think overall, you have to tackle the issue. It's different for every single person, but there's usually like a vector of vulnerability that causes a lot of people to seek out this sense of community in these far-right places. And it's oftentimes a direct consequence of something that they feel like they are not getting out of their lives. Like, it could be that they have issues with, they might be body conscious, they might have image issues, right? Or they might feel like there is this crippling anxiety that comes from recognizing that the society that was designed for their parents is not going to be the same for them. And I think that those underlying material inequalities are glaringly obvious, especially when you're young, when you feel like, well, I'm never going to retire, I'm never going to be able to own a home. And I think obviously you can't fix all of those things, but I think helping them through this journey of bettering themselves could allow them to develop more confidence within themselves. And I'm a very goal-oriented person. I try to always progress. I always set expectations for myself. I always set long-term goals for myself, mid-term goals for myself, and short-term goals that all correspond to one another. And not to get all Jordan Peterson with it, but I mean, it's pretty basic self-help stuff, honestly, but and it's different for every single person. But I think identifying what a major problem is in their lives that is causing them to seek out this kind of content and commentary is really valuable. And then helping them go through this journey. If they're struggling with their weight, for example, it's just one example, right? You can help them. You can help them in a non-toxic, in a more positive way, like help guide them in a positive direction where they maybe go work out a little bit more and slowly but surely become healthier and happier and more confident. And I think that is how I at least keep my brain as not fried as possible, even though I'm like tapping into the mainframe for 8 hours every day.
Yeah.
And I think that's very helpful for others as well.
Yeah, I appreciate your willingness to talk about your own vulnerability in relation to your body. I think that's an important conversation to see men having, right?
And I know you were joking about getting people to watch your streams, but was there a pivotal moment in your career when you felt like the platform could influence people?
I think I can't recall like one specific moment, but I definitely recognized it. I think especially after I got on Twitch, it might have been like the first TwitchCon I went to, but like the first time I like started interacting with fans in public, out in the wild, in like random interactions, where the feedback I got from them in terms of like having how much their minds had changed over the course of like years of watching me, that was when I was like, damn, like these people listen to what the fuck I have to say. Shit, I gotta act right. But I think I got that question right. Did I misunderstand it? I don't know. Okay.
A lot of people want to know who has been your biggest influence.
My biggest influence? Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't want to live out too much, but I think Jon Stewart he played a formative role, I think, when I was younger, growing up. Because he was one of the very few voices in mainstream media that was actively talking about all of the things that America was doing that was really fucked up. And he was doing it in a satirical way, but he was doing it in a very honest way, and I really value that. As far as other influences, I think, I love Norm Finkelstein. I love Noam Chomsky. These are people that I definitely have a lot of respect for, even if I sometimes disagree with them. They're stubborn old Jewish men, all of them. I just realized.
Okay, we know that Hasan was streaming all day, and he's been here for a while, right? So we're gonna wrap up, but we promise we will share with him all 200 questions so if he gets bored,
I'm gonna answer all of them.
he can read them late at night. But will you please join me in thanking Hasan for everything?
Thank you so much for coming, guys.